and as Barry mentioned, all of those leaders were working in their museums, projects that they were developing and that were in the beginning. So how did the work that you were doing in this area connect you with other Black museums and AAAMA?
Well, first of all, I want to say Barry,
Yes.
as a historian, you know, the first thing I'm going to say to you is, do you have that in writing? Because as you know, we were just having a discussion, the three of us, that we do all these things as African Americans, and we talk and have a good game, but we die and don't leave this information. And people come up with all kinds of spurious information, and your papers, your children will come to sell your house, and they throw out all that stuff, that stuff because they're looking for the dollar. Okay? So I want you to, if you do not have that in writing, to put it in writing, and I want you to send me a copy, because I think I have the largest collection on Black museums in the country. Okay? And as I was saying earlier too, I did the national survey for the National Endowment for the Humanities and went to every state to document these museums. And I have them listed. I went downstairs last night and pulled down a few of those big heavy books just to see. I hadn't looked at them in decades. And I said, well, let me look for the people who are on the program. I told Barry that I went to, and of course I keep missing his name. By the way, people, I have the long COVID. I had the COVID before they had any test, so I might not remember your name in a few minutes. John Kennard. I pulled out John Kennard. I pulled out Barry Gaither and several others, and I have the stack with all the people who had, quote unquote, museums, and I put quote unquote because all were not museums as we define museums. But I went and pulled Barry, and I'm amazed at all the personal information these people gave us, but we did a very detailed study of these institutions. So I know all Barry's business. Barry and John Kennard had more money for his institution than any other institution in the nation. And that's because of his connection with the government. John Kennard was fearless. He was absolutely fearless. And he didn't care what anybody thought. He was going to speak to the issues of African Americans. Yes, I remember that exhibition. What was it on rats?
The rat show.
Yeah, the rat show. And of course, I lived in upper Northwest, and so I never could drive well, so I got somebody, they would drive me down there, and we would go to the exhibitions. And what was so impressive too, it was a museum for the people. And you have to understand Anacostia to even understand that. And of course, I went to Boston, and I was so impressed with Barry's institution. And of course, it was art institution. As we were discussing earlier, Byron, what this survey told us was that most institutions that call themselves institutions of Black museums, that they really had African artifacts and photographs from Ebony Museum up on those walls. I went to every state, I went to all the institutions, and I wrote the detailed report for NEH, and we have this, all of these questionnaires. Of course, all of them are handwritten because we didn't have internet. appreciate that history, though, and I want to end that point with, please send me a copy for these archives, but also publish that particular piece of what you just gave. Okay, yes, in 1977, let me give you some background there. By 1977, yes, as Barry said, these different Black institutions were looking for money to support an institution. Only a few had the kind of funding that a Barry had and some others. Most had what they called exhibitions in their living room, in their houses, or in other kinds of places. Some didn't have any kind of site. They just traveled throughout a city and took their exhibitions to different places to introduce our people to their history. And so the National Endowment for the Humanities, the head of the National Endowment for the Humanities, invited me to meet with him. And I went downtown and I met with him, and I have to laugh now. I had on a little denim jumpsuit and didn't even wear a bra then. And I had my sunbed and my sandals on because I was just Bettie. And so I went down there to meet with him, and he said, what we need, we're getting these proposals from these Black institutions, but many of them are not Black institutions and aren't the kinds of things we fund, and they're written by all kinds of people. Well, Black people, churches and all, once they continue, that was the period when you were hearing about the National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities. And they had the money and they were funding institutions, but white institutions. They not only were doing that, they didn't even know Black scholars. They asked me to put together, which I did, and I have all those files, put together a list of the top scholars. Nell Irvin Painter sent me a letter, and she said, Betty, it was several people she recommended. She said they can't get grants. I mean, these were top scholars that we all knew who published. But white people, and remember what Barry said, Barry foreground where we were coming out of civil rights, Black power. That's really where we pick up with a lot of this, you see. And so, white people didn't know the Black world. We were in the Black world and they were in the white world, okay? And so he said, we want you to then do a detailed survey and tell us where and what these institutions are. So I said, okay. So I traveled for a whole year throughout the United States, going to every place that called itself a museum. In Philadelphia, I went to this one place where, and he was very well-known dancer. And they said they had a museum. They were in this old bank right at Spring Garden and 6th Street. Some of you who know Philadelphia know where I'm talking about. And I found them there with the dancers and all. They weren't a museum. There were a number of places that were not museums, but they knew that the endowment was funding these things, okay? So I got a whole picture of what was going on and details for these institutions. And I wrote a whole report, which is at the National Archives for American History.
Hey, Betty?
Now,
Betty?
yes.
I'm so sorry, excuse me. I have a question I'd like to, because I want you to get back a little bit to AAAM.
Yeah, well, but all this is a part of AAAM.
I know.
All of it is connected, because without money, you can't do much.
I know.
Okay, all of it is a part of the history. okay?
We discussed.
And it connects with Barry Gaither. And I'm telling you about the institutions that call themselves museums across the country and how important that was. And of course, Barry was talking about that.
Yes.
And you had at the same time, these key institutions and what they were doing. They were the standard bearers, okay? But the whole point is, by that particular point in time, we recognized that we had all these places, but the question was, how are we going to fund them? Okay? And so we moved forward with those who were able to get funding and to develop institutions. Now, my question would be for today, what we need to do is to do the same kind of detailed report now. So where are we now?
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that, I want everyone to know that, Betty has already let us know that next year, they need 2 hours.
You need the session. We need to have not 10 or 15 minutes. You cannot tell this story. And thirdly, too, I asked the question, you might know when I was invited to this. How old are the people in the audience? And I was told that, well, most are under 45. They're in that age group, somewhere late 20s to 45. So they don't know anything about what we're talking about.
We're gonna, everybody in this room is going to agree that you're going to be sending in requests to AAAM that they get 2 hours next year.
And so it's done.
And so then we're gonna, they have all agreed, they have all agreed to come back and continue this conversation because they do have amazing information. Barry was gracious enough to do 10 minutes where he had a 55-minute conversation with them that was
he sure did.
outstanding.
But it was worth it.
Yes, it was, but.
And we want it in writing.
Yes, and we want to move.
We want it in writing.
But we want to give everybody, we want to give all of you an opportunity to speak the meager 5 to 10 minutes we gave you. But because we also want to have these under 45-year-olds to ask a couple of questions. So Betty, thank you so much. And we're going to go to the next question, but we